Hello, everybody. My name is Doug Patterson. I am the senior minister at Smithfield United Church of Christ, downtown Pittsburgh. And I want to do this little video for your consideration this week, seeing as how we're not going to be able to worship in community this coming Sunday or the following Sunday. Hopefully we'll be able to gather sometime soon, but not right now. So in the meantime, I want to come to you by way of this beautiful technology and touch base and share some thoughts with you just a little bit. Some of you might be saying, well, Doug, why don't you live stream something? Well, there's nothing to live stream. All right. I mean, we're not having worship services in our beautiful sanctuary. There's nobody down there. And I can tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to go down there and put on my alb and my stole and all those ministerial things and stand up in an empty pulpit in front of an empty sanctuary and try to tape something or live stream something to make it seem like everything's okay. That's not the case. So I'm going to try to be more honest and authentic here if I can. And I'm going to tape this. I'm taping it right now out in my garage. And you might think that's a weird place. That's not very spiritual. That's not very sanctuary-like. Oh, yes, it is. This is where I come out to do my best thinking and to do my best kind of work. Some of you know that I build guitars, and this is where I come to do it. I have another little video that I produce from time to time, put up on Facebook. And this is where I do that from, and I'm comfortable out here, so I want to be as comfortable as I can today and just address you. Now, we are going to talk about the lectionary lesson for the day. That would be for Sunday, not September. Wow, where'd that come from? That would be for tomorrow. That would be March the 22nd. Today is Saturday, March the 21st. For tomorrow, the lectionary lesson, you might ask yourself, what is a lectionary lesson? The lectionary is a set of assigned biblical readings that most churches will adhere to and try to read every Sunday in their worship services, which I do probably 95% of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And today, when we get to it, because I want to share a couple thoughts, first of all, with you. When we get to it, you're going to find that, as I do, that there's a lot of things applicable to what we're going through right now. First of all, just a couple things. There's a million things I could talk to you about, a million of them. We could talk politics, we could talk science, we can talk theology. There's a million things we can talk about. So let me narrow it down just to share a couple thoughts with you. Number one is this. Now, I've heard from a lot of credible sources. I've read this, I've heard this. I've seen it all over the place, that gun sales in our nation are up 600% since the time, about a week ago, that all this started. 600%. If you go into any gun shop in America today, you're going to find the shelves are bare. All the ammunition has been hoarded and bought up. Gun sales have shot through the roof, and 90% of those gun sales are to people who have never owned a gun before, first-time gun buyers. Now, what does that mean? First of all, it concerns me a lot because it means that people are deathly afraid. We all are afraid, and that's not a bad thing, but if you let it get the best of you, this is what it comes to, deathly afraid. And it means that people are trying to hoard things, have guns that they're not trained to use. They don't have the proper permits for which to use them, but they got guns, they got ammunition, and they're reacting out of fear. We should be very, very concerned about that. I have my own kind of little thought about that, and that's this. With all the hoarding of the toilet paper that's gone on in this nation, I think people are trying to protect that stash. Just a thought. But fear. What are we afraid of? Well, let me tell you one thing I am not going to do, and I really hope that you're not going to do either, and it's this. We're not going to call this virus, this COVID-19 or coronavirus as we know it, we're not going to call it by any other name. We're certainly not going to apply the name of another nation to it. These xenophobic remarks that we hear and names given to this virus by people at the highest levels do nothing but promote fear and fan the flame of prejudice even higher and want us to put the blame on somebody else. That's not the case. Listen, this is a world community. We're all in this together. Do not buy into that whole thing about blaming this on somebody else. We're all in this together. Fear. Well, the Bible teaches us, I believe, that the opposite of fear is faith. So let's talk about that for a little bit today, can we? I'm going to read to you from the New Testament as translated by J.B. Phillips. Now, J.B. Phillips, it says modern English. Well, that's really not true anymore because this was from the early 60s. But J.B. Phillips also wrote a little book that I highly recommend to you. It's called Your God is Too Small by J.B. Phillips. It's a phenomenal little book, and I highly it's a fast read. I recommend it to you. Maybe if you need spare time, and you probably have a lot of time on your hands now, you can grab a copy of it and give it a read. Anyhow, I love this translation. He only did the New Testament. He didn't do the Old Testament, he did the New Testament. And I like it because I just like the terminologies that he uses. So today's lesson or Sunday's lesson, the 22nd, from the lectionary is from the Gospel of John, chapter 9. Let me read it to you. I'm only going to read like 7 or 8 verses. And I'm going to give you a sermon and commentary as I go along. Is that okay? Kind of a little Bible lesson here, if you will, because I think there's a lot of things that apply to us here today. Later, as Jesus walked along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. This man had never seen. He had never seen his family, never seen the faces of those who cared for him and whom he loved. He'd never seen trees. He'd never seen sky. He'd never seen anything at all like this. He was in total darkness. And he saw this man who had been blind from birth. And, Rabbi, whose sin caused this man's blindness? Asked the disciples. His own or his parents? Now, the feeling at the time was that any time that somebody was sick or had any kind of calamity in their lives, it meant that somebody had done something wrong, somebody had committed some kind of sin, somebody was to blame. Sound familiar? Today we want to blame everybody else for all of our problems, all of our illnesses, all of our downfalls. But there's something about, to me, that says you have to take responsibility for your life. If you mess up, own it. Apologize for it. Ask forgiveness for it. Make some kind of recompense for it and move on. Get a new life, but own it. But they didn't see it this way. And for the most part, neither do we today. Somebody has to be to blame. Whose sin caused this? Well, he was not born blind because of his own sin or that of his parents, returned Jesus, but to show the power of God at work in him. So, the Bible is up for interpretation. All I can do is just read it to you and give you my own thoughts, and you have to decide for yourself if I'm right, wrong, in a good direction, a bad direction. You have to form your own opinion. You have a brain, you have a spirit, you have a heart. You got to consider these things for yourself. But he says, this is not because somebody is to blame. It's because something good can come of it. And if something good comes of it, that's the work of God. We're left to consider right now. We have time on our hands, don't we? We're left to consider what good can come of this crisis. What good can come from us not being able to worship together? What good can come of us having to stay at home and be alone for all this time? What good? Now, if you can just turn your head around that and think about it in that way, I think something positive can come out of this in your life and in the lives of others. Certainly in our church. We're not ever going to be the same church again as we were before this. Hopefully, we're going to have a different outlook. We're going to have different missions in mind. We're going to have a different purpose. We must carry on the work of him who sent me while the daylight lasts. Night is coming when no one can work. Like right now. Nobody's working except for healthcare professionals, and I want you to keep these folks in your prayers. And if you are one of them, good for you. Try to take the best care of yourself that you possibly can. We're praying for you. We support you. Healthcare workers, grocery store workers, these people that carry on the essentials for us. These are the only people working. It says no one can work. And I am the world's light as long as I am in it. All right? Listen, we're people of the light, aren't we? We're people who profess Jesus. We're people who say that we've committed our lives to trying to follow him as best we can. We're people of the light, so we have to see things in a different light. Now, having said this, he spat on the ground and he made a sort of clay with the saliva. Gross. Now, I don't know, but maybe this is where that here's mud in your eye thing came from. I don't know that, but it might be. But he spat in the ground and he made mud or clay and he rubbed it on the man's eyes. Let me tell you something. If you have something wrong in your life, something that an illness, a disease, a problem you can't overcome, let me tell you, and you ask God to help you, healing is not pretty. Healing is not painless. Healing comes with a cost. And you're going to have to get dirty. You're going to have to dirty it up a little bit. You're going to have to absorb quite a bit of pain to get out of it. But there's always light at the end of the tunnel. All right? Well, we're not going to get out of this coronavirus thing unscathed. It's going to demand a lot of sacrifice on our part, which we've just now started to endure. And he applied this to the man's eyes, and he said, "Go and wash in the pool of Siloam." So the man went off, he washed, and he came back, and his sight was restored. He got to see the world for the very first time. He got to absorb it and to take it in. Listen, when we get to the other side of this virus, and we will, we're going to see the world in a whole different way. Hopefully a better way, a more healthy way, a less fearful way, a way in which we consider ourselves not just citizens of this nation, but citizens of the world. Well, anyhow, that's what I wanted to share with you today, just that little bit from the New Testament. And let me close out here by saying a couple things to you. Number one is this. We are people of prayer. And your prayers, all of our prayers take different forms. We think about it in different ways. We do it in different ways. Whatever your way might be, by good thoughts or just being quiet or writing them down. Whatever your prayers might be, pray for this world. Pray for those affected in a horrible way through this virus. Pray for a cure. Pray for immunization. Pray for all of these things, all right? Let's be people of prayer. Pray for your church. Pray for its leadership. And pray for God's people everywhere. Second of all, I want you to support your church financially. I'm not begging you. I'm just saying to you that the church's ministry has to continue, and it can't do that unless it has your support in so many ways, one of which is financial. So if you're a member of Smithfield, please remember this, and I hope that you will continue to support our ministries together. If you're a member of another church, because I know there's a lot of people watching this who don't belong to Smithfield, you support your church. You support those things, those ministries, those people that are important to you, because this is the only way we're going to make it through this together. And lastly, wash your hands. So important to wash your hands. Nothing is more effective, I'm told, at this time than washing your hands. So please make sure that you do that. Okay. I hope that this has been a little uplifting for you. I hope it's been interesting. It has been to me. I wish that we'd be able to be together, but we will be soon. In the meantime, you pray for your church. Talk to you later. Goodbye.